Good morning. I'm having my morning coffee. Maybe you are having it too. I look like I just came out of bed, and that's because I did. And I had a party this weekend, which may mean that I had some goo in my hair to shape it, and it hasn't come out yet. It's really hard to rinse out. So apologies for that. I wanted to talk about a psychological mechanism that we have that is basically at the heart of the current stalemate and capture of the population of the world, the entire world. And I guess if you realize what it is, then you can create an option for yourself to step out of it. You know how to do it. And I think to explain it, I first need to explain a little bit about the brain, and that's, people think that it's processing all the time, that it's basically taking all the information in and it's turning it into behavior. And it's not. It's basically trying to keep out as much information as possible. And it's only trying to see the differences. And how does it see the differences in our day-to-day life? Well, by generating what it expects. So you basically go through the world imagining it. And then if something that you imagine doesn't really fit reality, then of course there's a difference. That difference draws our attention, or it creates the attention, and we learn about it. And then of course we have an emotional our emotional responses are involved immediately to see whether we have to run or fight or do something aggressive, because it's something new and we don't know what it is. But otherwise, we simply go through the world not noticing anything. And there's a very good experiment, actually the same type of experiment that was referenced in Max Kaiser about the gorilla walking through a group of people playing volleyball. And not being noticed by people watching the game. That's how things work. Basically, yes, you're following the ball, and there's a really narrow band of information that's really entering your brain. But another one is where you have pictures you look at, and if you change something while your eye is moving, you don't notice it because your brain is not prepared to reassess the image after your eye has moved, because it never evolutionary had a situation where in 1/100th of a second, while your eye is moving, something important changed. And if something important had changed in that short period of time, your eyes would be moving quicker, because you would be either dead or alive as a result. Otherwise it's not important, and you would have evolved in a species that has quicker eye movements. But that shows you that you can basically completely change the reality and not notice it at all. And there's some experiments that you can find on YouTube, I guess. That's one important thing. And it tells you that you learn stuff at certain times, at certain moments, when basically you get all kinds of parameters in your brain get set. Something that has to do with your character, something that has to do with your physical strength, your ability to challenge. And that physical strength, your ability to challenge, your sense of vitality, is the topic of this video, because that has a reference, it has a gauge, it has a level. And where does that level come about? And basically, it's a level you know about, and that you basically form your behavior around it. You know that you. So, like, if you're a boxer, you know you can defeat one person and you're not anxious about it, and you know you cannot defeat another person, and you're very anxious about fighting. That's because you have that level of your physical strength, that knowledge. And that translates in life at the moment, with everybody knowing his social status, basically his picking order, his position, and in the line at the trough. And what happened, and what I think is important to understand, is that innate psychological mechanism, which basically I think originates in a situation where you have a tribe, and then you have a hunted animal, and animal gets killed, and then the stronger tribesmen of course eat first, and they beat up whoever comes close in the beginning. Or hyenas do that, chickens do that, every animal that I know does that. And because you want to avoid getting bitten or scratched or beaten or hurt, because that really reduces your survivability in nature, you have an expectation of that process, and you are very happy to adhere to your expectation of the success or failure of that challenge. I hope you're still with me. So basically, you want to know how strong you are because you don't want to challenge somebody that's stronger. You don't want to be challenged by somebody that's weaker and lose things that you think are important to make you stronger. So you have this whole, and why do you want to be stronger? Well, because the stronger people live longer, and of course they have more offspring. So evolutionary, that's the drive that you are left with. That mechanism has been hijacked. That mechanism has been hijacked by the banks and the financial system. And the parameter that we all use these days to measure our strength is money. So especially in the US, it's net worth of people. That is a very important thing about them, and that makes them more interesting than other people. So like if Donald Trump says, well, one of the beautiful things about me is that I have an immense amount of money, then he's really using that. But and every dispute about money reinforces the meaning of it. Every time you see you're angry about the bonuses given to the bankers, you're being a sucker because you're going on about something that is completely unimportant, but you make it important by being angry about it. And it really works like that. It works like you people that win the lottery, they win $50 million, and that's fantastic, and you really want that too. And people but it's all an illusion. It's all complete mind fuck, to use an inappropriate term. And because if you look at a day-to-day basis, let's say Jamie Dimon or something, he makes like super millions, which is unimportant, but just to make like it's very hard to talk about it without being caught in the same psychology, because everybody's measure of strength is for a large part in money. But he wakes up in the morning, he takes a leak, he drinks a cup of coffee, he sits down into a car, and he is driven to work, or he drives to work, and then he goes into an elevator, he sits down in a chair, he makes some phone calls all day, and that's it. He goes home and he has dinner, and then he goes to sleep. That's it. That's not much different from everybody else with a car and a job in an office. So there's nothing high status about that at all, and there's nothing that we should find awesome about it or dominating or whatever at all. It's not there, but it's presented as such, and it's presented in all kinds of ways that do connect to our physical sense of fulfillment, nourishment, strength. All these parameters, they're all being touched. So he looks very healthy because he wears a suit. That's always perfect, and which is something we want. It's, let's say, the analogy of physical strength is a power suit. Why is it called a power suit? Well, because it emanates power, which is physical power. That's the only thing we really understand. Then he goes into a big car, which you cannot really have. So that means that he dominates a territory that we are not. We are too weak to dominate because we don't have access to a Maybach supercar or whatever. So we feel weak because of that, physically weak. But it's an illusion. It's something that's been taught to us. We've been taught that through marketing, that this is a Maybach, you cannot afford it. Eat that shit and learn that you're less than us. It's an illusion. It's a lie. It's something they made up. And it goes on and on. He goes into a big stately office in a very expensive part of New York. Well, expense is not important. It's not about the money, Lebowski. It's not about money at all. But we believe it is, so then it becomes important. So there you already have the illusion feeding into the illusion. And he goes into the office and he makes very important phone calls. Well, the people say they're important. Why are they important? Well, that's because people say they're important. They're not important. Etc., etc. He goes on and on. And he goes to a big restaurant, fancy dinner, and people are waiting on him, which means that basically that's what happens if you're in a picking order. People start waiting on you. They start serving you. And seeing that happen to other people and knowing that it doesn't happen to you, again gives a signal of your physical power. But if you organize a party with friends and you say, well, let me sit on the throne and let you serve me bananas, whatever, then you can do the same game. And the reward, physically between Jamie Dimon and the guy serving him in the restaurant is not much different, because they both go home, they both have to sleep, they both have to eat, and it doesn't even taste much worse for the guy serving him. Where it does get physical and where it does get irritating and mean is where the people that believe in this whole system, believe in this status gradient, this picking order, are amongst law enforcement and the justice system. And we quickly recognize how that doesn't really fit in that picking order model, because we call that corrupt if they really respond to it. If they really respond to money directly. If you see, well, outside the fact that they should be fair, which means that they should obey the picking order, which we all do because we're all suckers, they should not be corrupt. So they should not respond differently if they're overly rewarded or secretly rewarded, and start moving outside the picking order, the money-based picking order, which is an illusion. So we do have a sense, but that's the same as saying, let's say, how can Spock do that? You know, he doesn't know the 51st language of the planet Zynga. When you're watching Star Wars, you're completely lost, because it's Star Wars, hello. It's a fucking game. It's a fucking story. It is illusion. It's nothing real about it. So, and the point is that, of course, there is a part of society that is run with money, that really provides the necessary means for everybody to exist, and that has been carefully taken away from the people, from the rest of the population. That all, because once again, because you have to believe in the money, you have to believe in the purpose and the need of it, in the fact that it's a gradient of strength, a gradient of status, a gradient of ownership. Because of that, you have to organize society in a certain way, where the farmers are way out there and you're in the city, and you really cannot move about without money. You have to make it. You have to get it somewhere. And you feel really weak if you don't have it. But, you know, take the fact that you're in this delusion, in this money delusion, in this money status delusion, and step out of it for a second and look around in the street, outside or something like that. Everywhere you see land. It can grow, it can produce food, what you need. You can have places where you catch the rainwater and you have the water. You don't have to buy it from somebody. You don't need the money. You know, you can plant your own food. You don't need to all grow it. Actually, one day in a week in a garden, in a communal garden, provides you with enough food as a group, as a whole, to feed yourself. And then you don't need money. And you can say, well, you have to buy fertilizer. Well, you can produce your own fertilizer. You're doing it every day. You know, that's how nature works. You basically if you're in a well-kept environment, if the ecology is in order, then you're producing exactly as much as you need, and the sun provides the rest. And you don't need money. And your status becomes derived from your skills at organizing and preparing and being able to respond to whatever is really necessary for people. But it would, and so part of that real, let's say, being in touch with the ecosystem and being in touch with the primary resources that you need, is now agriculture, and it's really removed from most people, and it's really done in a way that is completely stupid, but it makes more money for the people that believe in the illusion, in the money illusion. And the rest of let's say, and the whole society is organized in a way that maintains the money illusion, and that's super destructive as well, because it doesn't really mean anything. It requires people to buy stuff, because otherwise they wouldn't need money. But if they all bought stuff and it would last forever, then the game stops again. So they would have the stuff and they would feel the status that is goes along with it. So you have to make it so it breaks down, or that it wears out, or that it becomes unimportant. So you have to change the culture all the time. You basically have to move from one village to another, so every time you have to struggle in a different culture to find your new status. That's marketing, that's trends, that's brands, that's fashion, that's all that stuff that goes along with it. It's all a complete illusion. And the only thing you have to do to break out of it is to realize it, first of all, that there's something that you think that you need, but you don't really need it. So or that everything that is money should be avoided. How do you do it? Well, basically you make sure that you, and that's a little bit tying into the agoracentric idea actually. The only way that it goes wrong all the time is that law enforcement and police also believe it. So whenever a guy that has a lot of the money that he wants everybody to want, so that they organize themselves into the modern society that we see today and become workers and all that stuff and do all these jobs that they can only do because there's plenty of oil. If the oil runs out, it all stops. That's what's happening right now. But if that guy gets irritated, he gets a judge and he sues the hell out of you. And then law enforcement comes along and he kicks you out of the house. But there's no real reason to do that. The only reason is that everybody believes in this gradient. Everybody has been conditioned into this gradient. So if you are a group of people and you live in houses in the city and you all have this mortgage pressure and all that stuff and you need to work for your money, you can come together and say, well, we're not going to pay our mortgages anymore, we're not going to pay taxes anymore, we're not going to provide people with money anymore. And we take ownership of the territory that these houses are on and we're going to produce whatever we need on it. Well, the only thing you really need to do to be able to do that is make sure that law enforcement and judges know, and the local ones, that they're unwelcome if they support any action against it. And that's I guess that's the only challenge that you really have. And the way it works in the let's say the money gradient is that these people always get bribed by high income. So what you basically have to offer them, I guess, is something that they value more than that high income, and then you can capture your own town basically. I'm not sure if this sounds like I'm trying to instigate some kind of subversion. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to simply show you that what you need is not money. It is what you actually need. So the intermediary is only installed and created and maintained psychologically, and it uses a system that you have psychologically that everybody has. So there's something in your environment you're looking for to play the role of informing you about your strength. And I guess the most useful one would be your strength. Sounds dumb, but doing physical activities and working physically is more informing of your status than your money. And of course, a place where it works really well is in sports. And everybody understands a competition, sport competition, because it's about physical strength. Who's the strongest? Why is it important that he's a champion? Well, he'll be getting everything. He not only gets the food, but he also gets the women and everything else. And he gets a lot of money these days because the whole sports realm has been commercialized in a nasty way. Anyway, I hope I'm not sure about a point or a conclusion to this video, but it's a psychological mechanism, and if you're aware of it and you can organize socially, locally, then you can step out of it. And as a state, you can step out of it. You can say, well, we don't really need to be tied into this system, we have our own money. And then still it's money as a role of organizing and dividing work. But I guess the best thing would be if people owned their own money and if they were able to create it, and that's the barter share system that I developed a while back and that I have to revive. But I hope it's a useful video, and I hope it kind of gets you to think about these things.